Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you back to the fourth module of Being Your Own Boss. Is it courageous or crazy? Today we have a guest speaker, so this ought to be really interesting. We're talking about sources of funding. So all of you out there who are looking to start a business and want to leverage other people's money, we will talk about that in some depth today. So I'm Carl Dierschow. I'm with Small Fish Business Coaching. And I'd like to introduce Leslie Lautzenhiser. She was Franchoice.
Thanks, Carl, and thank you for joining us again. I'm Leslie Lautzenhiser with Franchoice, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our featured speaker today, Jenny Childs with Fran Fund. She is a premier source of business funding, an expert in that category, and I've worked closely with her on several deals that I've had with Franchoice. And I'm very excited to have her on the call today. Jenny, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the conversation, and just want to say hello to everyone. I want to say thank you to Leslie and Carl for putting this on, and you guys are a great resource for helping people find a business. So I'm happy to be here to talk about the funding opportunities.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we launch into it?
Okay, well, first let me tell you a little bit about our company. The company that I represent is a company called Fran Fund, which is actually short for franchise funding. If you could go ahead and go to the next slide for me there.
Okay.
So Fran Fund, what we specialize in is we help people who are starting a franchise find the startup capital in order to get into business. Several different ways in which somebody could fund a potential business endeavor, and really what we're here to do is to look at where somebody's assets are and help them determine what is the best funding solution for them. You go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about for funding. Very commonly, well, a lot of people think about debt financing, meaning you're taking on a loan from a bank or leveraging an asset. Others, will look into equity financing, taking cash from an investor or an angel investor. At the end of the day, angel investing is really not as common when you're the small business owner, startup business owner. That type of investing is usually for the larger type of businesses. But, it never does hurt if you do have a potential business partner or someone with money that might be willing to partner with you. And, of course, there's also funding strategies in which you can use assets to self-fund to start your business. So we'll cover each of these a little bit here today. You can go to the next slide, please. So this next slide talks a little bit about how to find small business loans. If you have a relationship with a local bank or a credit union, the biggest or the hardest part of actually finding or attaining a business loan through a local bank is really articulating what your business is going to be. Not all banks are set up to actually fund or finance startup business owners, and frankly, if you're starting a franchise, your local bank may have never written a loan for that particular franchise, may not be familiar with it. So usually the reason why clients end up, on our doorstep at Fran Fund is because we have an inventory of banks that we work with that we can put you in touch with that actually have written loans for several franchises. They understand startup business owners. So we're there to help mitigate and actually make the part of finding the bank to get you into business. We actually make that part a little bit simpler for our clientele.
Jenny, I appreciate the fact that you highlighted that banks may not be familiar with your kind of business or have done too much of this kind of stuff. And I actually hadn't thought much about that, but I think you're absolutely right that they may be struggling with how to give a loan to your kind of business depending on what you're trying to do. And so part of this is trying to find the right kind of lender who's familiar with and comfortable with what you're trying to do.
Absolutely, and it's not even so much about it is quite a bit about finding the bank that's going to work with you, but it's also being able to put together a comprehensive loan package for that bank to sell the bank on why they should work with you and approve your loan. And that's where a company like FranFund comes in, because we can package the business loan, we help you build your business plan, your pro forma, so that once we get you into the bank, hopefully the goal is they have a comprehensive loan package, they'll expedite you to an approval.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so could you go to the next slide please?
Yep.
Okay, so on this slide, it talks a little bit more about guidelines for attaining a business loan. Now, I will tell you, most banks, when you're a startup business owner, will want the loan to be packaged as an SBA loan. And the reason being is that the SBA, as a branch of our government, what they do is they guarantee the bank that if the bank makes the loan to you, as long as that bank makes a good solid loan, and I'll expand on what a good solid loan is, but as long as that bank makes a good solid loan, and if for some reason you were to default on that business loan, the bank could then turn to the SBA, and the SBA pays out the bank 75% on any loan that's left outstanding. So really the SBA, the government's not lending money. It is the bank that's actually lending money. And what that really leads to is the SBA putting some criteria on the banks to ensure that those loans that the banks are making are solid. Because our government really does not want to have to pay out the bank if they don't have to. So I think since the lending, I want to say lending has changed pretty significantly since the financial crisis back in 2008, and the SBA has absolutely put some more criteria on the banks to ensure that the banks are making solid loans. So to give you an idea on how some things have changed in recent years, for example, now that if you're looking to attain a business loan, most banks are going to want you to be able to come up with probably 25 to 30% of the total project cost to start your business yourself. So for example, if you go into a bank and say, hey, my total project cost to start my business, pay a franchise fee, find a site, build it out, working capital needs to get it to break even, is going to cost me $200,000. Well, the bank's going to want you to come up with about 25 to 30% of that yourself, which in that example, let's say you come up with 30%, that's $60,000, and the bank is really only financing the other $140,000. Now, for that part that the bank is financing, that $140,000, the bank is really just concerned at this point on how are you going to pay us back. And frankly, the SBA imposes some rules on the lenders to ensure that the banks get sufficient collateral from the borrower to make sure that that borrower is putting up the significant collateral to make sure that loan is going to get paid back. So I think what most people need to realize is if you're trying to attain a small business loan, not only do you need to have some cash, some skin in the game towards that business, but you're probably going to have to put up some collateral like a home in order to secure that loan. So SBA lending, it's a great fit for several people, but in instances where the client maybe doesn't have collateral or maybe even outside income to prove to the bank that they can secure that loan, sometimes SBA is not always the best fit, and that's when we have to start looking at some other options. Anybody have any questions about SBA so far?
Yeah, I guess one of the interesting questions that comes up here is there a reason why I would want to take out a loan if I could afford funding it myself? You know, suppose I had $250K in my own assets and resources and I needed $200K to start my business. Is that like pushing too close to the edge, and so maybe I should take out a loan? How's that work?
Well, it's really dependent on where somebody's assets are. You know, do they have outside income, you know, themselves from a job or from perhaps a spouse that's covering all the bills? You know, everybody talks about using other people's money as a great way to get into business, but let's face it, if you're using the bank's money, that's going to come with a cost. You know, for example, small business loans today, if you get an SBA loan today, the terms are typically 7 to 10 years and your starting interest rate is 6%.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably looking at fees and closing costs totaling about 4 to 4.5% of your loan amount. So it definitely costs money to get access to that money. So a lot of times if somebody does have their own cash or access to assets to do it themselves, if you think about it, when you self-fund a business, your ramp-up time is probably going to be a lot faster because you're not dealing with the fact that the moment you start making some money, you're having to pay down debt. So you tend to cash flow a little faster if you're not using somebody else's money.
Oh, okay.
And that's a good lead-in, I would say, for this next part of the presentation where we talk a little bit more about self-funding strategies. So let's go to the next slide here, please.
Okay.
So this next slide talks a little bit about a program that's called Rollover for Business Startups. And the Rollover for Business Startups program is a government program. It's been around since the 1970s. And essentially this program allows people to take money out of their pre-tax qualified retirement accounts, like your 401ks or your IRAs, as long as you're using that money to start a legitimate business endeavor and you follow the process and protocol of moving that money into cash for your business, you can get access to those pre-tax dollars and not have to worry about paying the taxes and penalties on that money to start your business. So this is a very attractive way for people to get into business, and I will say since the banking situation of 2008 where a lot of banks have retracted and upped the criteria of what it takes to attain a business loan, we're seeing more and more people moving to this self-funding strategy and using their pre-tax dollars to start their business. Because of course the goal of this program is, can you take this money out, start your business, and hopefully get a better return on that money than what you might be seeing right now in your current IRA and whatever investments you're in now.
I think you said the magic words, which is it comes without the penalties for early withdrawal and taxes.
Absolutely. And that's the attractive thing. I mean, if I have pre-tax dollars sitting around in a retirement account that frankly are going up with the ebbs and flows and the roller coaster of the market, if I can take that money out, take control of it, put it in my own business, I think under my control I can hopefully get a better return on that money. And frankly, if I have to put my own money at risk, I'd rather put my pre-tax dollars at risk than my after-tax dollars, because that's money I've never had to pay taxes on. So it's the cheaper money.
Very cool.
Hey, Jenny, when I talk to some candidates about this option, of course, there's always the people get nervous about, gambling their retirement fund. If for some reason they use the money to invest in their business and they've determined after a while that maybe the business isn't successful and they haven't utilized all of the money, is that money at risk, or how can that money be returned back to kind of an original 401k if for some reason the business doesn't work out?
Well, let's just put that into a real-world scenario. Let's say somebody pulls out $100,000 out of their retirement plan to invest into their business, and for some reason the business, worst case scenario happens. They use that $100,000 and they just don't get the business to cash flow positive, and they got to close up shop. Well, unfortunately, they're out that $100,000, but they don't have to pay any back taxes or penalties. That $100,000 is, it's gone. It was invested in this business. On paper, it's really a loss for them. And frankly, again, that $100,000 is money they've never had to pay taxes on. So it's a little cheaper than if you just take $100,000 of after-tax dollars, because that's money you have paid taxes on.
Right. Let's assume that they only go through like 50, and then they decide for whatever reason, maybe there's a personal situation or some other reason that they have to close shop prior to the entire investment being used in the business. Let's say maybe they have $50,000 left in that account. Can that money be returned back to the account with no issues or penalties?
There are ways to unwind. It depends on what's going on in the business. Of course, if that person is, basically operating a business that, is on the decline, they would need to pay off their creditors, liquidate assets, things like that, before that money could be rolled back into the plan and unwound.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So good question. If you could go to the next slide here, I'm going to describe a little bit about what this process looks like. So with this program, there's essentially 4 major steps that we have to walk you through to move this money. To give you an idea of how Fran Fund is set up to facilitate this, we've been a facilitator of this government program for about 10 years. So we're really here to walk you through the protocol and process of moving the money from, let's say, current retirement account and into cash for your business. So literally on that side of our house, when you hire us, you're hiring our attorneys and our specialists to make sure it's all done correctly. And we really break it down into 4 major steps that we have to follow to move your money. So first step, our attorneys have to form the corporation that you're ultimately going to run your business or franchise through. So our attorneys will file the articles of incorporation there in your state, get your tax ID number established. Once that corporation is formed, the second step of the program is we then have to establish a new 401k plan that's going to be sponsored by your new company. Now, this probably resonates with a lot of people out there because most of us have worked for companies that have provided a 401k plan or offering in the past. Well, now you are going to own a company that provides a 401k for yourself and future employees to be able to shelter income and save for retirement. So now that we've got that 401k plan for your company set up, the third step of the program is the actual rollover. So let's just say you have $100,000 sitting in an IRA somewhere. We're going to request that $100,000 to be liquidated out of that IRA and directly rolled over to this new 401k at your new company. So now we have $100,000 in cash sitting in your corporation's new 401k plan, but now we have to get that money out of there so you can use it and start your business. So in this fourth and final step, in order to get you funded, what we have to do is actually issue stock from your company into this 401k plan, and in exchange we can now pull out the $100,000 in cash and have that money directly wired and deposited to your company's bank account wherever you bank there locally. So at the end of the day, the corporation has $100,000 in cash sitting in its corporation's checking account that you can use to start your business. And of course, theoretically, if you were to get a statement that same day from the 401k provider, it would still say that you have $100,000 in value under your name in the company's 401k plan. It just happens to all be invested in your privately held company stock right now. So that is the,
Sorry, real quick question. Let's assume somebody has $500,000 in their 401k, but the business that they're looking at investing in, their total needs are only $200,000. Could they only liquidate and roll over $200,000 into this, or would they have to basically roll their entire amount out as cash?
No, they don't have to access the entire amount in their retirement plan. They can just pull out the amount they need to start their business. And that's the nice thing with this program. There's no maximums. So if a client has $500,000 and they're starting a business and they need all $500,000, they can pull it all out. If they only need $100,000 or $200,000, it's really dictated by the client and the business that they're doing as to how much they want to pull out in those pre-tax dollars to start that business.
Great, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions that I can answer before going on? So I would say probably safe to go to the next slide here.
Okay.
So this really just gives an overview on some of the benefits of the program. Obviously, you're getting access to pre-tax dollars to start a business, which, we've talked about the benefits of that. But I think the other key thing is, and I think Leslie and Carl, you could probably speak a lot more to this, a lot of clients that I work with have recently been laid off. They don't have income coming into the household. So the beauty of this program is that if a client pulls money out of their retirement and puts that money into their company, they can actually put themselves on immediate salary from their own company. I mean, they're going to be an employee of their own corporation. Their title might be president. They might run the whole show, but they're still an employee, and they deserve a wage while they're ramping up their business. So the nice thing with this is a client can actually how much they're going to need and add in how much they're going to need to pay themselves. That way they can draw a little income while they're in ramp-up mode. So that's a pretty attractive feature. And of course, at the end of the day, if for some reason, worst case scenario happens, the client, unfortunately, if the business doesn't make it, yes, you're out your pre-tax dollars. However, you haven't put your credit at risk or your home at risk. So none of those things actually come into play and have no bearing on actually going through this program.
Well, thanks, Jenny. I really appreciate that you've gone into extra depth on this one, because I think there's a lot of news here for me, and I know a lot of the people I work with haven't thought through it this way. So I appreciate you going into extra depth here.
Oh, no problem. I have to say that in working with clients just throughout the country, that what I found is once somebody understands that this program, it's not just about taking the money out. It's about actually making an investment in your business and seeing if you can get a better return. And oh, by the way, you've got a 401k plan established here, so as you become successful, you still have a way to shelter income and build your retirement back up. It's more of a retirement investment strategy than it is anything else. So, I think it's very attractive for a lot of people who are, perhaps in the situation that don't have the adequate collateral or the credit worthiness, or have recently lost a job and have access to an old 401k. This has been a very common strategy that's been growing a lot in the last couple of years, for people to get started.
Excellent.
So,
okay.
My next slide.
Yep.
My next slide here, just real quick. I'm not going to read all these off, but just want to give people an overview on the types of retirement plans that are eligible for this program. So if you have any of these types of retirement accounts, you might actually be a good candidate for this program.
Excellent.
And then the next slide here, let's go to that next slide here. At the end of the day, this is where I just want to give you a quick overview on FranFund. We really do have two sides of our house. On one side we have our lending side, where we work with several banks throughout the country to help our clients attain business loans. On the other side, we have the rollover side, where we're focused on helping people attain their retirement dollars to get them into business. And we have a very conservative approach. We try to tailor the funding strategy to the client based on where their assets are and what kind of business are you starting and how much do you need. So because of that, I think people can feel pretty comfortable in working with us to help them come up with a strategy that's going to make sense, because one strategy may make more sense for one type of business that you're thinking about doing versus another strategy if you're considering another type of business. So sometimes there's not one silver bullet. It could actually be a combination of strategies, and it's really just having the professionals sit down and help you figure out which direction to go.
Let me ask you, Jenny, do you also work with people on using family and friends as a source of funding, and the other kinds of venture capital, including angel investors and all that kind of stuff?
We don't work with angel investors, no.
Okay.
And again, it's because usually if you're starting up a small business, angel investors are usually more interested in, the multi-million dollar deals. Mm-hmm. You don't see a lot of angel investors excited about putting money into somebody's, 150,000 service-based business. They're not going to get that same kind of return. Now, if a client comes to us, needs help with financing, and for some reason don't have the assets themselves to do it, then of course we're going to recommend, do you have a friend, family member, somebody you can partner with, or somebody who would be willing to help you and be a guarantor for a loan. So at those points, yeah, we would absolutely recommend bringing in somebody else.
Oh, okay. And the other question we have here is, do you, a significant part of our audience here is not building up a franchise operation, but they're starting their own independent company. Do you work with people who are in that kind of situation, or are you exclusive to working with franchisees?
I will say a majority of our business is working with people who are starting franchises, but I will tell you it's the same type of funding strategy
Sure.
for people doing a franchise as it is an independent business. So we absolutely do work with several independent owners and people who are doing business opportunities that are outside of franchising, because the rollover program is for any legitimate business. so you don't have to be starting a franchise to access your retirement dollars.
Awesome.
SBA financing, you don't need to be starting a franchise, so we can look at all sides.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
And sorry, and Jenny, before we move along, one funding vehicle that you, I don't believe touched on too much, but I know that in a case where you and I worked together, you were very successful in helping a candidate of mine who really didn't qualify for either the SBA or didn't have much of a 401k, but you were able to help them get lines of credit established through various credit card companies that you have relationships with that allow him to fund the business. Can you just take just one quick brief moment and maybe touch upon that, because in that scenario it could have worked for any type of business. That was the critical factor in getting him funded.
Yeah. So, and I remember that scenario. The client did have some retirement money, but he needed a little extra just to augment and fill the gap between what he had and what he needed to really get that business off the ground. So, yes, unsecured financing is another option. That's basically where we go to the banks and creditors and say, we don't have any collateral to pledge here, but the client has a great credit score, and can his signature be the guarantee? And, you know, unsecured credit, you know, some people think that's a bit out of the box, but I will say it's a very common strategy people will take. They'll open up unsecured credit lines in order to fill the gap. And frankly, you know, if you're starting a business, I would say it makes all the sense in the world to hold on to your cash. Cash is king. Use that cash and maybe throw that piece of machinery, that, you know, $10,000 piece of machinery on a credit card and pay it off slowly so you can hold on to your cash while you're ramping up the business. So it's very common, and we do have resources to put people in touch, you know, to help them build credit and credit lines for their new business if that's a strategy they need to take to fill the goal.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. I know that one, and that one particular case was very key in getting that that deal done for that individual.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So at the next slide here, I would say that if anyone is interested in finding out what kind of funding options they're eligible for, we do our initial consultations with our clients for free. You can visit us at franfund.com. There's a short questionnaire there that will probably take you all of 5 minutes to fill out. You just have to click on Get Funded Now, fill out that form, and we'll contact you to set up a time to just have an initial consult. The consults take all of 30, maybe 45 minutes just to go through your eligibility. But that way, too, you can at least feel comfortable in the back of your mind that if you're just starting a business search, then after a consult with us, you're going to know whether or not you have the eligibility and the ability to finance the business, and we can help you work through those things. And again, the consultation's free to help you work through and come up with some solutions.
Boy, and I tell you, it sounds like that would be such a great asset for nothing else but peace of mind of knowing how close to the edge are you skating here.
Absolutely, and we're usually the first stop for most people. You know, after meeting with someone like yourself, the big question then becomes, well, how am I going to pay for it? And that's usually when we come into play on, let's come up with some strategies and educate you so, you can feel comfortable about, looking further into business opportunities.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
So if anyone would like to contact me directly here, I have my contact information on the last slide. You can email me, you can call me, and I'll be happy to set up some time to talk further with you.
Great. Well, Jenny, thank you so much. And I just say it's always been a pleasure working with Fran Fund, a very quality organization who definitely knows what they're talking about. And the information I provided today, I hope hopefully allows some confidence for people who are thinking about funding strategies and giving them some ammunition of the questions to ask and what type of funding vehicles are out there to make their dreams come true. Thank you for joining today. Again, I'm Leslie with FranChoice, and what I do essentially is work on the franchising side of starting up a business. I help individuals match up to the franchises that are the best fit for them based on their long and short-term goals and their criteria and interests and skills. And my services free to provide that education and coaching. So I look forward to working with any of you who are interested in a franchise. Carl?
Yeah, and thank you, Jenny, so much. I tell you, this has been my learning high point of the month. This has been great for me to understand a lot more about assets that people may have, including myself in my own business. So thank you. I'm Carl Dierschow. Again, I'm with Small Fish Business Coaching, and I work with people who are looking to create their own business or to take their business to the next level of success. So thanks everyone who came today. I really appreciate your involvement, and we wish you a good time, and we will be back again with the next installment. Look out for that. It'll be on these pages. Thanks a bunch, and take care, everyone.